Greetings, Omnium Slice, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about and ranking my top Resident Evil games of all time. This is purely just for fun. Also, I know I've made this video before, but I have since then played a lot more of these Resident Evil games, so I have a better idea of what I like and what I don't like. So I'm going to be trying to rank these games in chronological order. I will not be ranking games that I have not played. So let's start with Resident Evil 0. Resident Evil 0 is a little bit of a weird one for me because I want to love this game, but I also can't seem to 100% enjoy it. So I'm going to be putting it on B. So this game, don't get me wrong, it is fantastic. It looks absolutely amazing. I love fixed camera angles and I love pre-rendered backgrounds, and the aesthetic of this game is top notch. It is by far my favorite aesthetic in all of Resident Evil. The RE1 Remake and Resident Evil 0 both share similar aesthetics, and I can safely say that is my favorite thing about both of these games. I personally don't like the use of two characters, certainly plays a factor in the enjoyment of this game for me. So I'm putting it on B because I'm not too sure how to feel about it. I want to love it, it looks amazing, I love Rebecca and Billy, they're both great characters, but in terms of gameplay, it's not my preferred option. So let's go with Resident Evil 1. So Resident Evil 1 Remake is absolutely fantastic. It is everything you need from Resident Evil. Every Resident Evil game should be based on Resident Evil 1, or at least the remake. The only downside to this game is the Crimson Heads. To me personally, that is not something I like, but I guess it's nice to have something different to keep you on your toes. But other than that, everything's perfect about RE1, and the same goes with RE1 Original. So I recently played the GOG version of RE1, and I was surprised at how much I actually enjoyed it. If you haven't played it already, you can check it out on my channel if you want to watch it, or you can get the original trilogy on GOG.com. It's very cheap and 100% worth it if you have a computer. The only downside to this game is that it's very short, and I wish there was more of it. And that applies to both RE1s. So next up, I know there's gonna be a lot of S pluses, but bear with me. Resident Evil 2 Remake. Now, Resident Evil 2 Remake is my favorite game of all time. You guys know this. If you're subscribed to me, I feel a little bit embarrassed talking about this because I know a lot of you are going to be disagreeing with me by putting RE2 Remake right next to RE1 Remake. But hey, this is purely my tier list, okay? It's just for fun. But yes, RE2 Remake is absolutely perfect. It is a perfect demonstration on how to update a game, modernize it, while still keeping the original formula of the original game. Mind you, the original game is slightly better in my opinion, but I put both of those games on the same level because they're amazing. But we'll talk about that in a second. So, Resident Evil 2 Remake is absolutely perfect. I absolutely love the RE engine. It fits Raccoon City perfectly. Everything about RE2 I love. There is nothing that I don't enjoy. But the only thing I guess that could have been improved is the B scenario. The B scenario was more impactful in the original game. In the second playthrough of the remake, it just feels like it's a different take on the A scenario. There's not much that's different other than puzzles. But mind you, I actually don't mind that too much because it's slightly different puzzles, so it's a different experience, but it could have been better for sure. But yes, the aesthetic, Claire Redfield, Leon Kennedy, arguably the two best characters in the entire franchise, in my opinion. They're both in this game, and yeah, it's everything about this game I love. I love that it's the items are in fixed locations. It's not random. I know that if I go into a room, I know what I will find. I know that I can learn this game. I know that I can 100% learn it and enjoy it, and that's how I enjoy games, and that's what I love about the original games, and that's what's in RE2 Remake. So speaking of RE2, I think RE2 is slightly better than the remake. I have played it recently again after like over a decade of having not played the original game, once again on GOG. This game is absolutely the most perfect experience when it comes to gaming. It once again is an absolute classic. The music is perfect. All of them have iconic voice lines and voice actors. Now let's talk about the original RE3 Nemesis. RE3 Nemesis was my first game that I played as a child and my first Resident Evil game ever. I put this on A mostly because I enjoy RE2 more than 3. I really love the music in this game. I love the fact that you're exploring Raccoon City. That is one step ahead of what Resident Evil 2 was, when, whereas Resident Evil 2 was more about the police station, RE3 really took you around Raccoon City. RE3 Nemesis definitely has some iconic moments for me, and that's what got me into Resident Evil. So I'm putting it on A, mostly because RE2 had a bigger impact on me, but RE3 was the first game that I've ever played, and I really love Jill and Carlos in this. They have some great interactions, and it was proof that Resident Evil doesn't have to be all horror, and it was actually the first action-based Resident Evil, in my opinion. So it allowed more players back then to be introduced to the franchise, and I think that's a great thing. So speaking of RE3, I'm going to be putting RE3 Remake on C. Now, mind you, this wasn't an easy decision, because I actually genuinely do like RE3 Remake, but I think I enjoy Zero more than RE3 Remake, mostly because, I don't know, I just prefer classic Resident Evil a little bit more. But RE3 Remake is not a bad game per se. I think is very short. There's a lot of potential there. Not that being very short is something that's bad. Most Resident Evil games are very short, but I just didn't feel like RE3 Remake really used that potential that it had. And it would have been really nice if the original creators of RE2 Remake had worked on RE3 Remake as well, but I think unfortunately it was a different team that was developing the game, so it just didn't feel like it had that same vibe. But of course, it's an amazing game. I really love the hospital. That's my favorite part about the game. It really does capture the horror vibe of the hospital, and it was the highlight of 2020 for me when this game came out. And yeah, I'm putting it on C. But I don't hate this game. Once again, I don't hate any Resident Evil games, but I know the community feels a certain way about this game. So next up, we have RE4, the original. I want to put this on B. I'm gonna give it a generous A. I know this might come as a surprise to you, but I never really loved RE4 that much. Once again, this was another game that I got on release in 2005 on the PS2. I know it released on the GameCube before this, but I only had a PS2 and I didn't really have the internet back then, so I didn't know about different versions of games. But I watched my brother play through this for what feels like 1,000 hours, so I really had a different perspective of the game prior to playing it. So RE4, of course, is one of the ones that you guys love the most. A lot of you guys that are in your 20s, early 30s, started with this game, which, by the way, I'm in my 20s, late 20s, but I did start with 3, so a little bit earlier than 4. RE4 is a great game, but I personally don't prefer it over the other ones. I don't think this game is anywhere close being one of the best games of all time, let alone one of the best Resident Evil games. It's definitely fun, but as a Resident Evil game, to me, having played the other ones, the original ones, it just felt like a huge departure from the original formula. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I grew up with the other ones, so to me Resident Evil meant something else. That's why I didn't really enjoy RE4 as much as other people did, because I didn't start with it. I had already so much experience with Resident Evil prior to RE4. That's why RE4 wasn't one of my favorite ones. So I still feel like the remake is a lot better, and it definitely improves on everything that the original had. So I'm putting the RE4 remake on S+, mostly because, once again, the original RE2 team worked on this game, so of course it's going to be amazing. Anything that these people touch becomes absolute gold, and RE4 remake is an entirely better game than the original game was. I feel like it takes so much from the original game and it improved it on all fronts. And it's okay if you don't agree, but that's how I personally feel. RE4 Remake is probably also one of the most replayable games I've experienced in any of the Resident Evil games. You can do so much in this game. It is one of the most complete games out there in the franchise. And I'm not even talking about mods. But if you have it on PC, you can mod the heck out of this game. It is absolutely one of the most moddable games and most replayable games of all time. The voice actors are amazing. They care so much about the game. I know the Leon voice actor, Nick, he's absolutely a huge fan of Resident Evil and Leon. So you can really feel that in his performance. Yeah, overall entertainment, RE4 is an amazing game. The only downsides to me are, once again, the random loot. I prefer fixed loot. I prefer knowing what I'm going to find in an area. This game combines fixed loot and random. It's mostly random, but some loot is fixed. But that's why I'm putting it on S+, because it's a good balance between action and horror, and the gameplay is actually much slower than the original, so that's why I prefer it. And yeah, I could talk about these games for a long time, so I'm just gonna shut up now. So next up, I realized I skipped Code Veronica. So Code Veronica, I'm putting Code Veronica on the same level as Resident Evil 0, mostly because I don't know how to feel about this game. I want to love it. I absolutely love Claire. My favorite design for Claire is Code Veronica Claire. I like Chris. I like fixed camera angles. I like the more slower paced Resident Evils. But everything else about Code Veronica, mind you, I only played the European version, so it might be different. Everything else just feels like it lacks substance. Like, the gameplay itself is okay, it just feels sluggish. There's a weird black fog over every level, so I can't really see what's going on. It's kind of... I think it's kind of suffering from the limitations of the PlayStation 2 at the time. Or I don't know, whatever platform it was on, but I played it on the PlayStation 2. I think Code Veronica has so much potential in it. It could have been so much better. I really, really love the setting. I really love the dollhouse, the mansion, or whatever you want to call it. I feel like it could have been more expanded, you know, bigger, like the RPD in RE2. And overall, it just feels like it could have been much better. I want to love this game, so I hope it gets remade at some point. Alright, so next up we have Resident Evil Revelations, I guess? No, let's do RE5. So RE5, once again, I'm putting it on B, mostly because it is such a huge departure from Resident Evil, but it's such a fun game to play with friends. That's pretty much how I feel about RE5. I don't have anything else to say about it. It's obviously not meant to be classic Resident Evil. It's obviously taking RE4 and turning it into a bigger game and much more action focused. So that's, once again, not something I look forward to in a game such as Resident Evil, but it is insanely fun to play with a friend. So it's not a bad game, it's just a very, very, very weird Resident Evil game. And it's probably not the best Resident Evil game. Once again, I'm putting it on B because I don't know how to feel about it. You know, I have mixed opinions. 50% of me doesn't like it and 50% of me likes it. So I'm putting it on B. So Resident Evil Revelations 1. So I'm putting Resident Evil Revelations 1 on D, mostly because I really like I really like Revelations in terms of the gameplay, how it's much slower, but I couldn't care about the story. I really couldn't care about the characters. even though it was Jill, it just didn't feel like Jill to me. It felt like it was, I don't know, it felt a little bit disconnected from Resident Evil. Mind you, I like the game in terms of gameplay, but it just becomes boring after a while. Revelations 2 was the sequel to Revelations 1. There's not much to say other than it's a okay game. Could have been much better. I like Claire. She's funny. Revelations 2 is like the RE4 for Claire. This is experienced Claire. She's witty. She has one-liners. But other than that, the gameplay is just kind of meh. It's too much like The Last of Us. I just prefer something else. It's not that bad, but I just prefer other types of gameplay. All right, let's talk about the elephant in the room. RE6. Now, nothing against RE6, but let's talk about the elephant in the room. RE6. Now, nothing against RE6, but I'll be honest with you, I became disinterested in Resident Evil right after RE5. So I didn't really care too much about RE6. So when I saw it, I wasn't impressed and I just kind of moved on. I don't particularly like this game. I think it's ridiculous. But it's definitely targeting those people that grew up with RE4, I think. And that's perfectly fine. I didn't really care too much about the gameplay. It's too much action, it's too ridiculous. But I guess if you are someone who plays Resident Evil for the characters, you're probably a fan of RE6. Alright, next up we have RE7. So RE7 I'm actually gonna put on A because I don't like first camera angle, I'll be honest. And RE7 is not the best game, but RE7 is absolutely an amazing return to the original formula of Resident Evil 1 specifically. And it's a perfect example of doing something new and using the original winning formula. Although it's a little bit rough around the edges and it becomes a little bit boring after a long time, like after the guest house, you know, into the ship. That's probably the worst part about it. So I'm putting it on A, mostly because I don't like first person. Didn't really care too much about Ethan, but I absolutely loved every character. They did an amazing job at voice acting these characters and mo-capturing them. That is, you know, it was a complete set of new people coming into the franchise, and they managed to make me enjoy their, you know, their performance. So that's a plus for me. I actually really like the characters in RE7. Removing the salt mines and the ship part would make this game a lot better in my opinion. And that's how I feel about RE Village. RE Village is an okay game. It's not particularly a horror game. It's just alright. Alright, we're almost at the end here. I don't think I've played... Oh, RE-verse. I mean, not much to say. RE-verse, multiplayer game. Don't really care too much. I was really good at it though. I did play Survivor. I was like 5 or 6. I don't remember too much, but I remember that it was kind of scary. That is my top tier games in Resident Evil franchise of all time. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, comment down below what you think. What are your top 10 or where will you put these games? You can use the TierMaker tier list in the description down below if you want to do your own. And you can share with me on Discord if you want to post it in the Resident Evil channel. You can find the link in the description also. Join us, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.